And I don't know how long you've had a show, but you are constantly getting bombarded by people that want to advertise for you. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what I did was I took one of those people and I said, you know what? I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you 1 month. I can pay this amount. Show me what you can do.
Welcome to my podcast story, the show where podcasters share the real journey behind their voices, from their first mic check to their biggest milestones. Every episode reveals the lessons, challenges, and breakthrough that shape a podcast star's journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I can't wait for you to hear today's story. Today on my podcast story, I am joined by Eve Hall, a licensed physical therapist, certified health coach, and the bold voice behind the Please Me podcast, ranked in the top 2.5% globally. His mission is clear: to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health, empower people to communicate without shame, and close the orgasm gap through a growing orgasm revolution movement. From survivor to advocate, Eve has turned her personal journey of healing and experimentation into a platform where she not only educates but also liberates. On Please Me, the name of her podcast, she dives into everything from safe sex and kink to relationship options and realities of sexual wellness. Eve is not just a podcaster, she's also an innovator with an invention in the safe sex space, and she's building a movement that challenges taboos and sparks change. We're about to dive into Eve's podcast story, why she started, and the behind the scenes of running her show, how it's been growing, and what's next for her on this boat journey. Welcome to the podcast, Eve.
Thank you so much for having me, Wisdom. I'm so excited to be talking to you.
Yeah. Your podcast is, what's the name of your podcast and what is your podcast about?
Sure. So the name of my podcast is called Please Me Podcast with Eve, or just Please Me. And it is about destigmatizing conversations about sex and sexual health. And I like to say that I'm on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation, because I started off in my childhood with traumatic events that happened to me in the sexual space. And I've, been on a journey throughout my life to heal from that. And the podcast unusually continues to do that for me. I wasn't expecting that when I started the podcast, but it has been an amazing healing journey for me as well.
Well, thank you for starting the podcast and thank you for being on the show. We were just talking before we started the podcast episode. You've built Please Me into a globally ranked podcast, listened in over 123 countries. Well, I want to start at the very beginning. What made you to decide to take your personal journey and turn that into a podcast?
So I'm a licensed physical therapist by trade. That's my
Okay.
profession. And when I got divorced around 8 years ago, I moved out of state to a different state. I moved to Florida.
Okay.
And when I moved to Florida, I entered into my second coming of age, I'll say that, where I was, dating again and like out in the world and experiencing my sexuality in a different way than I had never experienced before. And that really led me to focus my practice, my physical therapy practice, around sexual health. And so I treat conditions in my practice of sexual health, such as erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, painful sex, incontinence, many different sexual health conditions that all revolve around the pelvic floor. And so most therapists that work in the pelvic floor say that they're quote unquote pelvic floor physical therapists, but I feel like most people don't even know what the pelvic floor is.
Yeah.
And more people will understand sexual health. So I like to say that I'm a sexual health physical therapist.
Yeah.
And so that was part of my journey. I started my own practice focusing on that. And then I realized that I absolutely love my patients and love helping them with their sexual health, because sex is something that brings us joy in our lives. And, unless you are plugging in energy into that area of your life, you are missing out on some joy of life, if not a lot of joy of life. So I love helping my patients in this arena. And I thought that starting a podcast could help my business and also just allow me an outlet to discuss the things that I love to talk about, which is sex, sexuality, and sexual health.
I know you just shared with me the timeline of how everything became a podcast. But I want us to zoom in, right? Was there a single moment when you're like, this has to be a podcast.
Yes, because I created, you mentioned this before, a sexual health device that I'm still in the works of creating. I'm looking for finances, to continue that.
Yeah.
But I thought that if I were to create a platform around sexuality and be seen as an expert in the sexual health space, that once my device, my sexual health device, is ready for the market, I already have a platform to sort
Yeah,
of
the
discuss
audience
it.
and distribution. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was sort of the beginning of why I decided to create this podcast, but it has become so much more than that. It's become a healing journey for me. I'm now writing an article, a monthly article in ASN magazine. So I'm a columnist now, which
Yeah.
I never expected to do. I've spoken at many different conferences, one of which was the National Association, I'm sorry, the National Sexual Assault Conference in Washington, D.C. And that was really important to me because I attended that conference as a person seeking help as a victim of sexual abuse
Yeah.
in my 20s. And so coming back to that as a speaker was like a full circle moment for me. That was a really beautiful experience. And now I'm looking to really plug into that speaking engagement career and to travel around the world sharing my message.
Wow. Wow. Everything is just coming together. It's a full ecosystem. Um, before we proceed with the conversation, how old is the podcast?
So it's a little over 2 years old.
Oh,
And I'm really proud of my podcast because recently, in the last couple of weeks, actually, it's ranked #1 in the United States
wow.
and globally, including Nigeria.
Wow.
So thank you, all of Africa and Nigeria, for ranking Please Me as #1. That was so exciting to me. And, so I'm so, so thrilled to be on here talking to you in Nigeria
Yeah.
about my show.
Wow. Wow. I don't know if you've related with this feeling, but there's a point in time when, after all the chaos of starting a podcast, figuring out what to do, one of these days you just go on the podcast listening platform, Spotify, Apple, depending on the one you listen to, and you just search for your podcast. You see your podcast comes up, and you look at the cover art, and you pick up one of your episodes, and you just click play on it, and you listen to your your voice, and you're like, wow, I'm a podcaster. I created this. I'm a genius. There's just that feeling. Wow. And it's so
I
rewarding.
can relate to that for sure because, initially everybody hates the sound of their own voice. I think that's just like a common thing for everybody. But once you get used to listening to it, then you can really become proud of the work that you're doing. And I just get so many messages thanking me. Actually, just recently, my editor sent me a message, actually this morning, thanking me because the episode that she was editing really spoke to her. And so she said, "Thank you for creating this space for us to have these conversations that need to be had." And so I am just so proud of myself for having created this space because, there's not a lot of spaces where we can really, truly, and honestly be authentically ourselves in the sexual health arena. And Please Me is that for a lot of people.
Yeah, your podcast is it's unapologetically bold, right? And
Absolutely.
how did you find the courage to lean into that voice, especially given the stigma that still surrounds sexual health conversations?
I think it was a very gradual thing. I think initially I was very scared to talk about my own journey because, it was putting myself out there in a way that I had never done before. It was, announcing it to the world, basically, because really, when you publish a podcast, you may only be intending for it to be listened to in a certain area, but it is global. And so it was a little bit scary at first, but as I told my story, more and more people were like, I really needed to hear that. I can relate to that. And so it's very relatable. And so I think that's why it's caught on and it's growing and growing. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Now you've been doing the podcast for over 2 years, and listeners and countries that you probably did not even think to reach when you started the podcast. You've reached those countries, Nigeria, and I'm sure there are other countries. You mentioned Spain in the pre-interview, plus a whole other list of countries. That's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. I just love the fact that it's listened to on every continent. I think that that is unbelievable. And it ranked #1 on every continent, which I think is also unbelievable. I mean, there were countries on the list that I didn't even know how to pronounce. I'm like, how do you even say that country? I've never, thought about it,
Yeah,
It's amazing. It's just like expanding my mind too. And I always say, and I know this has nothing to do with my show, but I lived overseas as a teenager, and I feel like traveling is something that really expands your mind. And I always tell people, like, if you can travel, travel, because it changes you. It changes you like internally. It makes you see the world from a different perspective. And so I love that I'm able to really share my message across the world, even to countries that I didn't even think would be interested in my show, Muslim countries that, their women's rights are really suppressed. And so I'm really proud that, people are listening in those countries and even, rating me #1, which is unbelievable to me.
yeah. Your podcast, please, me covers a wide range of topics. From safe sex to orgasm gap and so many other things. How do you decide what makes it onto your show?
It's a lot of things that I believe in. So for instance, I consider myself polyamorous. So sometimes I will have shows about polyamory or about alternative ways of coupling that are maybe not necessarily traditional. So it really is things that I believe in, things that I want to talk about. For instance, I don't believe in, injecting things into our body to change the way that we look. I think that every single human being is beautiful and should love their body that they're in and learn to love their body that they're in. And so I don't do shows about enhancements like, for instance, I've gotten a lot of, emails asking for people like surgeons to be
Yeah,
on the show to talk about enhancements to like the vagina or the penis, etc. I don't believe in that. So I'm not going to promote it to the world. I think that people should really love their bodies and the bodies that they're in. And so self-love is something that I really like to champion as well.
yeah. Having a podcast where you have to make decisions regarding what you believe in really puts in the forefront. Okay, this is what I actually believe. Oh, I don't really feel well with this episode. I don't think I'm going to do it anyway. Like, oh, why don't I feel well about it? Oh, it's because it contradicts with what I stand for. And so when you do the podcast for why, when they tell you, oh, what do you believe? What's some of your values? You're like, oh yeah, it's easy. But prior to the podcast, and like, I'm not really sure. I could tell you, like, the way I just asked you, you were just mentioning them, and I was like, I could say go on, and you could just keep on going on with some of the things you believe in. Wow.
Absolutely. And that
Yeah,
covers politics too.
yeah,
I would have to say that I am a timid person and I'm not the most outgoing person. I think I'm more introverted than extroverted. And it's interesting because when you listen to podcasters, often you think that they're extroverted, but that's not always the case. We are talking right now. I don't know about you, but
yeah,
I'm talking all by myself in my home, in my
yeah,
room. I'm alone here. I'm just
yeah,
talking to you. It's not stressful. But when you get into a group environment or bigger, then it becomes more stressful. So even things like politics that I never thought I'd touch on my show, I have because they relate to what I'm talking about, which is women's empowerment and women's health. And, abortion has become a very big topic in the United States right now. Our rights are being taken away from us. And so I find that it's important for me to speak up. And absolutely, it makes me scared. Okay. I'm not going to lie. When I'm putting that episode out there, it makes me scared. Like, what will the repercussions of this be for me? It makes me nervous. But at the same time, I feel like my voice is necessary, especially in this space. So I'm not going to be talking about politics, in terms of,
yeah.
international
Or how it
relationships,
connects to
relations or
the
anything like
the
that.
podcast.
But exactly how it relates to my show. I feel
Yeah.
like since I am a voice in this arena, I need to comment about these things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Can you walk us through your process of preparing an episode from research to recording to releasing?
Sure. So I use a platform called Podmatch. Podmatch connects me with guests.
Okay.
And it's an amazing platform. I feel, and I've told them this before, it's the only platform that I will be true to forever because I have found amazing guests on that platform. That's how I met you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Podmatch is number one. I find the guest that I want to interview. We set a date. I do a pre-interview, just to make sure that the energy is right. There's been times where I've done a pre-interview and I know that, after the conversation of like 10 minutes, that it's not going to be a good interview. So then I'll say, I've decided to go a different route. But typically, if I've already predetermined that there's
Yeah.
someone that I want to pre-interview, it usually goes well. And
Yeah.
then we set up an interview, we do the interview, and then I send it off to my editor. I've
Okay.
always had an editor and a producer from the very beginning of my show. And the reason is because one, I'm busy as a single mom. Two, I have, another career that I need to focus my energy on as well. And so I knew that if I were to do a podcast and also edit and produce it, I probably wouldn't have a podcast. So I knew my limitations from the beginning. So I send it off to my editor. She edits it, sends it back to me. I approve everything, make changes, and then she posts it and it's out in the world. So that's basically the nuts and bolts, very simplified.
Wow. Wow. You mentioned Podmatch as one of the tools you use. Other than Podmatch, what other tools keep your show running smoothly?
So I use Big View or Big View. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Big View
Yeah.
is a platform where you can create different speeches, sort of like a what is it called? A teleprompter.
Teleprompter. Yeah.
I don't really use it as a teleprompter, but I do keep all of my intros in Big View. So I will write my intro in Big View, and so Big View is part of what I use. I also use Megaphone. Megaphone is where the platform that I
Really?
post my shows. Yes, are you on
Wow.
Megaphone too?
No, like you're the first actual person in real life that I've actually spoken to that uses megaphone. I don't. Wow.
Do you use Megaphone too?
No, I use the alternative Anchor, Spotify for creators. Yeah,
Okay,
they're both owned
okay,
by
very good.
Spotify. So yeah,
Yes. Oh, so you use Spotify. Okay. I
yeah,
love Spotify. Um, I love Spotify because the video and audio option are available, and that's
yeah,
really the only platform that you can post both video and audio on a podcast platform outside of YouTube.
yeah,
So I love Spotify, and anytime that I share a link, I usually share the Spotify link because it gives the option of whether the person wants to listen to it or view it as well. So
yeah.
so I use Megaphone, which, you are familiar with because of Spotify. And that's where, the hosting site is that sends it out to, all of the different places that you can listen to podcasts.
Wow, wow. Okay, once an episode goes live, is there any other process, or that's just it? We've done the episode and we
No,
move on to the next
no,
one.
there's always a process for me because I'm always interested in quality control. And I've had 5 editors since I started. And so it's important for me to listen to the show after it's been published to make sure that, since I've been on Megaphone, ads have been placed on my show. Before that, they weren't. So I want to make sure that the ad placement is appropriate, it's not cutting off my voice, and it sounds right. So, and also I look at usually just Apple and Spotify to make sure that the thumbnails are correctly placed. And because thumbnails or cover art, like the ones that are behind me here,
Yeah,
are important for people to see when they're looking at a podcast, because if there's no cover art, it's going to be less interesting and they may not click on it
yeah,
if there's no cover art. So I always like to double check and make sure that that the quality is what I want it to
Yeah,
be.
just see
And
that everything is running
oftentimes,
smoothly.
exactly. So I listen to it all the way through again to make sure that the ads sound right. Sometimes, there's been instances where they've run the same ad like 3 times in a row.
Mm.
And so I'll reach out and say, hey, I don't know why, but the same exact ad is running 3 times in a row. That's like doesn't sound good.
Yeah,
Can we fix that? And so I'm always, focusing on the quality of the show because I think it's important. I want to sound as professional as I feel
yeah.
into putting myself out into the world that way.
You mentioned, I've started running ads on since I've been on Megaphone. What platform did you switch from to Megaphone?
It was on Buzzsprout before, and I loved Buzzsprout, but they really just didn't have enough opportunities for advertisements. And I know that they do offer advertisements, but not enough.
Yeah,
Every once in a while, I would get one, that would say, hey, we're interested in advertising on your show. And then I guess they would see what my show is about, and maybe they didn't want to be
yeah.
on
It's
a
like no, no,
sexuality
no, no, no.
podcast. And so then they would change their mind. And I'm like, podcasting is an expensive, you know,
Yeah, project.
career,
Yeah.
especially if you are an independent podcaster. I don't know if you're independent, but I'm an independent
What's
podcaster.
independent?
So,
I'm not sure if I understand what that means. What does independent
like
mean?
you're an indie podcaster. You don't have funding.
Oh. So that's what. Yeah, I'm independent. I thought it meant something else
Yes.
because the fact that you asked me, I'm not sure if you're an independent podcast. I was like, really? Are there any signs that look like I'm owned by a corporate organization? I'm independent.
Well, yeah, me too.
uh,
Okay, me too. I
yeah.
mean, there have been some people that I've actually, interviewed that had a contract from the beginning to do their show. And so they
Oh,
had funding from the beginning, and their shows sound super professional and everything. I
yeah,
want my show to sound just as professional as those,
yeah,
but I'm an independent podcaster, so I have to pay for every single show to come out, you
yeah.
know? And so, it's definitely important to me to sound professional, even though I'm an independent podcaster.
Yeah. When you switched from Buzzsprout to Megaphone, was it was the ad feature that made you make the switch, right?
Yes, it was the ability to monetize the show. That was the biggest reason why I switched, and it
Okay.
was a very good decision.
Yeah, I'm curious, right? Because I there was a time I did my research about Megaphone. There's not a lot of content about Megaphone on the internet, on YouTube. It's just limited. Do you pay to be on Megaphone, or is it like free and they place ads and they take their cuts and you take your cut?
So yes, you have to pay to be on Megaphone, as you have to pay to be on Buzzsprout. I was paying to be on Buzzsprout too.
Yeah.
It's more money to be on Megaphone, but they offer more services.
How much?
You have to have a certain amount of
Downloads. Yeah.
downloads in order for them to consider you to be
Okay.
on Megaphone. So you have to grow your show to a certain level before Megaphone will accept you as a client. So that's probably why there's not a lot of information about Megaphone out there, because you can't not anybody can join Megaphone.
Yeah.
You have to be at a certain level. But what's interesting, I love my Megaphone story, because what's interesting about Megaphone is that they sent me an email,
They reached out
and
to you.
they reached out to me, but they thought I was someone else. It said, "Dear someone else's name, blah, 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 blah,
Oh,
Megaphone." And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Responded back, I don't know who that person is, but my name is such and such, and I'm interested in
yeah.
Megaphone. And that was my in to Megaphone,
Wow.
and it took a few weeks before they were to respond back to me. It wasn't like an automatic thing, and I had to prove my worth, basically saying these are my downloads, this is my, these are my stats, and I deserve to be on the platform.
Yeah.
And they agreed to take me on, and the rest is history. I love Megaphone.
At
They
that at
have
the,
really good customer support.
the point in time when you joined Megaphone, what was the downloads like?
Uh, I can't remember what their limits were, but I
No.
do think it was something like you had to have like something like 5,000 downloads per episode.
Oh,
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember exactly because it's been probably 6 months or so. But you have to have a certain level before you can get into Megaphone.
yeah. Wow. And how much do you currently pay on Megaphone per month?
So you can, it depends. There's different tiers. So the first tier, I believe, is $100 per
Okay.
month. However, I decided to join a direct sales agency, and the direct sales agency has a bunch of other podcasts that they represent on Megaphone. So when you join a direct sales agency, they pay for your Megaphone. So I'm not currently
Ooh.
paying for
But
Megaphone
they take a
because the
revenue share.
direct, but they take a revenue share of the
Oh,
ads, etc.
yeah, makes
So
sense.
yes. So I'm not paying right now because they're paying, but I'm
Yeah,
paying
but it's
them
coming
through
from
the
your money,
ads.
so you're still paying. For
Exactly.
everybody, it's a win-win.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm really excited for you. I'm always happy to see when podcasters are what's the word? When the podcast itself is able to fund itself and then some, right? It's always good to see that, because if you've done podcasting, you know that takes a lot of time and energy and money too.
It does. And money too.
Yeah, enough of Megaphone. The topic you cover, I said earlier on, it's a what a tab. It's what a lot of persons don't like to talk about. In the moment when you start discussing, everybody's like, the atmosphere in the room changes, and everybody's like, oh, what's going on here, right? And you share your own story, right? You're vulnerable. You're vulnerable. How do you, in an episode, how do you decide what to share and what to keep private, or is it like everything?
It's not everything. I can't say that I share everything.
Okay.
That would be an extreme amount of vulnerability. But I do share a lot about my history and my life. And the way that I decide is really just based on the conversation that's being had. If it's an appropriate time for me to share something about myself and my history, I will, to the point where I'm comfortable with what I'm sharing. If I don't feel comfortable about sharing too many details, and I never share details, I just share like a general
Yeah.
outline of
Yeah.
what happened to me. But yeah, that's how I decide. It really is not something that I plan. If it comes up in the conversation and I feel the need to share it at that moment, I do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about growth and impact. Okay.
Sure.
Your podcast is, it's ranked top 0.5% globally. It's ranking number one in many countries, one of them including Nigeria. That's ranking, in Africa, and plus a whole other countries that we can't even pronounce their names. Quick break. Before we continue, I'd love to invite you to join the My Podcast Story newsletter. Each week, I share highlights from our guest stories, behind the scenes podcasting tips, and resources to help you grow your own show. You can sign up at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. Now, let's get back to the episode. Congratulations on that, Eve. What do you think has been the biggest driver of your growth for your podcast?
The biggest growth, I think, has been hiring someone to help with marketing.
Wait,
I
you
think
did not say that. I'm glad I asked you this question. Okay,
I
tell
think
me more.
that has been the biggest driver of my growth. And, initially I was, just funding the editor, but not paying for marketing. And I've been to many podcast conferences. I feel like that's the best place to learn the business of podcasting. And so I heard someone on stage say this, and I can't remember who it was because I've been to so many different conferences. And I get very overwhelmed when I'm there. So like my brain gets really full very quickly. But I heard somebody say this: you're not gonna create the most amazing party and have all of the decorations and have the most beautiful outfit and have the most wonderful cake and have everything that you can think of in this party, pictures and photographs and videos and all of these things, and then not invite anybody to come to the party. And
Well, where?
advertising is inviting people to come to the party because you're putting yourself out there in a way that you can't do it on your own. And a lot
Yeah.
of times people feel that social media is that invitation. But again, something else that I learned in a different conference was that social media does not drive podcast listeners. It may get people interested in the show, but most people that are looking at social media are looking at it for short-term content. Is that what it's called?
Short form. Yeah.
Short form content, which is like little 30-second clips, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're looking at. They're looking at the 30-second clips. They don't want to watch an entire show. They're there to scroll and to like get their mind off of their lives for however many minutes they're on that social media. They're not trying to listen to a podcast. So I've had to sort of switch my my tactics in terms of growing my show and getting more invitations out there to listen to my show. And one of those things was advertising. So once I started advertising, my show skyrocketed.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm only like partially there because I can only
just starting
afford
out.
a certain amount of
Yeah.
advertising. If I had a bigger budget, I could certainly afford more advertising. But another thing that they suggested was have a social media presence, but don't let that be the only way that you're inviting to your show.
Okay.
Newsletters are a really great way because people are more engaged with an email newsletter than they would be on social media. So,
Wow. Okay, I have so many follow-up questions.
okay.
I feel like we just get into the juice of the whole conversation. You mentioned advertising, right? That's like a very broad concept. Are we talking about Facebook advertising? Are we talking about podcast advertising? Are we talking about advertising on Google? Are we talking about what kind of advertising? Where are we advertising on?
You know, I wish that I knew the answer to that question, Wisdom. I really do. And I don't know how long you've had a show, but you are constantly getting bombarded by people that want to advertise for you.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what I did was I took one of those people and I said, you know what? I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you 1 month. I can pay this amount. Show me what you can do. And they have advertised my show to the point where it's been able to get to #1 on Apple. And globally. And I know that if I paid more advertisers, it would even grow more. But right now, there's not funds for it. But advertising is what gave me that growth.
Wow.
And I've asked them many times to share with me where they're advertising. Link me on what you're doing. Tell me what, where is my information going out there? And I never get a straight answer from them. But but it's working. And so I'm not gonna, change it right now because it's working for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm curious, right? Like with the amount of sources that's coming from this advertising, like what's the budget every month you spend on advertising?
I spend $150 a month.
Wow. I mean, that's what's the word? How do I say it so it doesn't look like I'm discounting the price? I was expecting like 1,000, considering the amount of return on investment you've gotten. I was like, wow, maybe she's spending $1,000, $2,000. So I'm like in my head, I'm like, what if she spends $500 per month? What would happen?
Yes, I know. I just need to make 500 more so that I can spend 500 more on advertising. Because I know that if I did spend more on advertising, it would be much bigger of a show.
Yeah.
Right now, that's what I can afford because I have to work within the constraints of the budget. Yeah,
that's the pure business principle. One of the things I love about podcasting is that when you get people to listen to your podcast, they like your podcast. Usually when they do advertising of podcast, you would pitch the show idea to the people, right? Whether it's let's say for example, a host read ads, right? Let's say someone pays me an ad to talk about your show. Like let's say you pay me an ad to talk about your show on my podcast. I'm like, yeah, today's show is sponsored by the Please Me podcast host of, and then I say, oh, Please Me is a podcast, and I talk about what the podcast is about, right? I've talked about the podcast. Now, if someone's listening and they're like, nah, that stuff is not for me, they go on with their day, right? But if someone's like, oh yeah, I like that podcast concept, I'd love to like listen more, they go check out the podcast on the podcast platforms. And so if they listen to the show and they like your show, they pretty much stay, and they like their loyalty is like it's longer, their retention is longer compared to other platforms like YouTube where they watch the video and like yeah they move on, right? So I love that. Wow. Wow, I should spend more on ads.
I can give you
Yeah.
my people's information, but
Wow.
you won't get a lot of information from them, but you will get results.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to say something now. Can you give me their name? I have a way. I think one of my superpower is investigative research. I would find all the behind the scenes and know everything that's going on and they're doing. And I might share it with you if you want, but no
I
need.
will share it with you offline here
Okay.
because
Okay.
it's the spelling and the name is I can't
Okay.
remember like
No
exactly how to
problem.
pronounce it.
That will mean a lot. That will mean a lot. That will mean a
But
lot
I
to
will
me.
definitely share it with you offline here.
Yeah, please do, because I love the concepts you use about having a badass party, and that it goes on to just disprove the idea of build it and they'll come. I mean, if I'm spending money on a big let's say events and stuff like that, I don't want to take chances of build it they will come. Like eventually, like a lot of things will go bad if I use the idea of build it they will come. No, no, like I have to go meet them and tell them that I have an amazing show. Come check it out.
Yeah, exactly. You have to build it and then you have to invite to the building. You have to
Yeah,
invite to the party. If you don't invite to the party, nobody's going to know about it. Yes, you'll get like people that are going to organically find it. But that's not going to happen like spontaneously,
yeah, and it's just too small.
especially if you're not, a celebrity or somebody with a big name that people would know and want to listen automatically, based on that. If you're not a celebrity, you need to have advertising in podcasting, in my opinion, at least if you want to grow your show
Yeah, well.
seriously.
So one of the key concepts I'm learning from your story is you hired a producer who's also the editor, right? The same person's wearing the same hat, and that person helps you stay consistent, right? In a lot of ways, right? They save you the editing, and the fact that you have someone who does editing allows you to show up because you're like, I have to send them an episode to edit this week, and then you've also hired a marketing agency for the marketing the podcast that has allowed you to grow the show to a point where you're making even you're getting your return on investment, and uh, wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you,
very
thank
proud
you.
of my show.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. I'm glad we got to have this conversation. Wow. Wow.
Me too. I hope it helps you and other people out there that are interested in starting a podcast, because podcasting is a really fun, exciting thing to do. Unfortunately, most people don't make it past 4 episodes because they realize how hard it is. It's not easy to do. And if you're doing your own editing and producing as well, then that's another third and fourth job that you're taking on yourself. And a lot of times people don't realize how much work is involved and they give up. So, only a very small percentage of people are successful in podcasting because of all of the work involved. So, if you can hire somebody to do the things that you're not good at. I'm not a great tech person. I mean, I learn and I can use technology, and
Yeah.
I always say I'm not good, but actually I'm pretty good because I feel like I've learned a lot of different things. But at the same time, it's not something that I enjoy. So I don't think that I would enjoy the editing process. I enjoy telling them how to fix it.
Yeah, you
That
want
part I enjoy.
yeah, you want to know enough so you can tell when things are not done properly and like up to standard, right? So like, oh, what's happening? The sound, yeah, it's terrible. Fix it.
Exactly, exactly. And knowing what those things are. And I just recently started with a new editor. And so I've been sort of training her, and she has the least experience out of all the editors that I've had in the past. So before I was like, okay, take it and go.
Yeah.
And I relied on them, and what they said was like the law because I didn't know. But now that I have this new editor and I've had to sort of learn the ropes myself as I'm training her, it has really taught me so much more about my show and about what the, necessary requirements are for
Yeah.
every episode. And so that's actually helped me a lot. So yeah, you should know enough to be able to spot the problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, having a business, right? Which podcast is also like a business. If you want
Yes.
to understand your business and know what's going on, so that so you can say, so this is what's happening. What's this? You don't want to be in a business where you have no clue what's going on. Like, okay, what's that? Like, oh, wow. You mentioned newsletter as part of the ecosystem. Do you have a newsletter, and how big is the newsletter?
I do have a newsletter. I just started it a couple of months ago. It's not
Wow.
very old, so it's
Okay.
a fairly new newsletter. But the day that I started the newsletter, the next morning I woke up and I had over 500 subscribers, and I was shocked. I was
Wow. Why
like,
didn't you start
where?
sooner? Wow.
I was so shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, people are actually reading this. Like, I just posted it. I mean, it was really great. So I use Substack for my newsletter, and so far it's been a really great experience. And I feel like they give you a lot of information, you know, the stats on your newsletter, how many people open your newsletter, you know, and any comments you can respond to. So it really is building a community around your podcast so that you can have more conversations with your fans. And, you know, that's what it's all about, is really impacting their lives.
Wow. 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 You should have started the newsletter sooner. Wow. 500.
I
Wow.
know, I know, I know.
Wow. Yeah, the thing I love about newsletter is unlike every other platform, like the podcast, YouTube, and all that, right? You don't have direct access to talk to your subscribers, your listeners, right? Compared to a newsletter, you can go straight and you'll be sure that they will get the message you sent and it gets to their inbox without passing through all the middlemen, like the platforms.
Yes, and you own it.
Yeah, you
And
own it.
that's so
Mm.
important because, you know, very easily Instagram or Facebook can just eliminate my profile if they don't like
Yeah,
something that I said. And when you're talking about sexuality and sexual health and sex in general, oftentimes they don't want to hear that kind of stuff. You have to misspell things to be able to
yeah,
get your message out there. And I know a lot of other people in this space that have had their whole profiles eliminated and have had to start from ground zero. So having a newsletter is something that you own, just like your website is something that you own. And so sending people in that arena is better than, you know, being all over the place. And it's not
yeah.
that I don't use social media, but it's not something that I focus on as much because I want to direct people to the spaces that I own.
Exactly. I see newsletter like, having friends, right? It's not enough to say, well, I have a lot of friends, and I'm like, okay, call one of them. And they're like, well, actually, it's not as simple. I'm like, wait, but they're your friends. Like, send them a text, call them. But with a newsletter, you can say, yeah, I have a lot of subscribers, I have a huge audience, and you send a message. Even if tomorrow you start a product or a product line or something like that, right? An info product, community, and event, you can just go straight to the inbox and voila, people respond and get it. Wow, that's brilliant. I've learned so much from just having this chat with you. Wow.
I'm excited to be talking to you, and I want to know because I heard that Africa has um their own internet now. And I am like so excited about that, honestly. I think that that's amazing. Um is
Wait,
that
wait,
where
wait,
people
wait, wait. When you say Africa has their own internet, I have no, like, what do you mean? I feel like I understand you, but I don't even know what you mean. Can you explain that to me?
So I'm not the techie person, right? So you're asking me for techie information,
No, no, I'm
but
not talking
I
about.
heard
I'm not talking about the technicality. I'm trying to like wrap up my head around what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the internet itself, right? Its
Huh.
own internet, like that's not necessarily connected or maybe connected all over the world, but is no longer reliant on the West. That is what I'm
Oh,
talking about.
oh, that's what you mean. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't get it. I was like, wait, what's she saying? Because like we've always had internet. So why is she saying we have internet? Okay, yeah. So this was what she means. I have to go more into that, but yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's amazing. I
yeah,
really do. I hope that, you know, if people are listening to me on that internet, that to me, that's super exciting that I've like gone over there into that internet as well. Because, you know, right now I've only been on the Western internet, you know, and where it can reach. So I just think it's super exciting. Times that we live in, very tumultuous times we live in, but also exciting because a lot of different countries are taking their power back. And I think that that's important.
yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. One of the things we never really got to talk about is the free way you've been growing your show. I noticed you've been consistent with going to a minimum of about 2 podcasts every month as a guest. And how's that visibility fed back into the growth of Please Me?
It's hard for me to really know
Yeah.
how much that has impacted my growth. I've been doing interviews since the beginning, really. Actually, the first interview I did was even before I started my podcast. I just knew that I wanted to start a podcast, and so I went on a show. So my first interview was actually before I even had a podcast. I think it's important. I think that it's one of the things that, when you go to conferences, and this is where I learn a lot of my information, that they say this is how you can grow your podcast, by being on other shows so that people can hear you in different arenas and then maybe follow you. So for me, I'm just continuing to do it because I know that I've heard that this is the way to grow my show. So I like to be on different podcasts to just reach different audiences. Everybody has their own audience. You have your own audience.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sexuality podcasts that they have their own audience and their own fans, and they don't know anything about my show. So I think it's a great way to get your message out there.
Yeah, and it goes on to establish you as a top leader in the space, and the fact that that's the thing I noticed about guesting on podcast. Unlike every other method, is that with guesting, you're not trying to convince someone to be a podcast listener. They're already a podcast listener. Whoever's listening to this episode, they already listen to podcasts. So what you're only convincing them to do is, oh, listen to my show about sex and sexuality, sexual health, right? That's what you're trying to convince them. Not, oh, come listen to a podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and all that. So I'm like, well, come and listen to a podcast, and I'm like, I'm not really sure. I don't really know what that is. I don't do that.
Exactly, which is
Yeah,
why you're going in circles when you're only
yeah,
advertising on Instagram or Facebook, because those people are not necessarily podcast listeners. They're scrollers. So, and that there's nothing wrong with that, but you're preaching to the wrong audience, basically,
yeah. Wow, there's so much to talk about about the podcast. Well, it's been an exciting conversation. So many ideas I'm going to adopt. Um, when you think about the future of Please Me, what's next?
I think the future of Please Me is getting out there and doing speaking engagements around the country and around the world. I really would love to develop a university tour where I speak to a lot of different colleges and universities about sexual health, about consent, about boundaries, about what we should be doing to protect ourselves, because people aren't going to abstain, okay? People are going to have sex. And so we should be talking frankly and honestly about sex and sexuality in the college space. It's something that is happening, and people don't have the guidance that they need or the sex education that they need. So I think that that would be one place where I would like to, make my mark. Also, speaking to women's groups around the world, and talking about women's empowerment,
Yeah.
and talking about why sexuality is so important to empower ourselves. It really is the creative center of our bodies. And if you're not tapping into that creativity, you are going to get stuck in a lot of ways. Having that energy flowing correctly is going to give you confidence. And that confidence is something that I like to call big clit energy. And I actually trademarked that. That's my trademark.
Yeah,
And I
I
love
see
to
where you
talk.
spin that off from. Yeah, no, I see it.
Yes.
Yeah, you did it from the guy zone and then you spinned it off for ladies. That's
Correct.
creative.
I actually did an early podcast about big dick energy, and I wanted to find the female equivalent of that. And so I researched and I researched, and all I could find was that women could also have big dick energy. And I said, you know what? I don't have a dick. I don't want to have big dick energy. I mean, that just means that I'm like in my masculine.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be in my masculine. I want to be in my feminine. So I coined the term big clit energy and decided to trademark it because, women need that confidence too, that creative
Oh, you
fire.
trademarked it. Wow, that's brilliant. So I'll be careful when next if I ever have to use that word, so you don't sue me.
You might have to pay me.
That's so what? That's so what's the word? That's so creative of you, like, because we need to do a part 2 of this episode. We'll find the
I
time,
would love
yeah,
to.
in the future, because there's so many things we need to talk about. Trademarking your IP and so many other aspects we want to talk about. Just as a way to close the episode, you happen to be a podcaster in a niche that is sensitive, right? Sensitive in the fact that people don't want to talk about it. So many platforms that are moderating platforms, right? These are platforms they're like, she talks about that stuff. Let's throttle the rich. Let's, other stuff. For other listeners, they have an idea to talk about a topic in a sensitive niche. It might not be about sex. It might be something different, but it's sensitive, right? It's not like, oh, the traditional mainstream that everybody's like, oh, let's give you a hug. Let's talk about it. What advice? Because I feel like the struggle, it's kind of the same in a way that, it's sensitive. No one wants to talk about it. What advice would you give to them as someone who's done it?
I would say, believe in your voice, believe in your message, and put it out there. You are not going to be, everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody is going to support the work that you do.
Yeah.
But you will be impacting people's lives. Focus on those people. Focus on the people that you're impacting and not the ones that are not interested.
Wow. Thank you so much, Eve. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you. Before I ask where listeners can learn more about what you do, how many episodes do you release in a week?
I release 2 episodes in a week. Sometimes one of them is always a guest interview. Sometimes it's the second one is part 2 of that episode. Or sometimes it's just me talking about a specific topic. So either a guest and me by myself or the same guest twice in that week. So that's how I release my episodes.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We talked about the podcast. Where can we listen to the podcast and also connect with you?
You can listen to the podcast anywhere you find podcasts. I love Spotify, like I mentioned before, because
What's the name?
you can. The name is Please Me Podcast with Eve, and you can find it on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And on Spotify, you can also watch the video form.
Oh. If we want to connect or reach out to you, how can we do that?
You can reach me on pleaseme.online. Pleaseme.online is my website. It has a host of wonderful things on there. My website was nominated for a Best Education Website Award. So it has lots of sexual education on there, lots of webinars that I've done in the past. It also has an amazing sex toy store on there and ways to reach me. So if you want to reach me, you can go to the contacts page. On the contacts page are all of my socials, so you can follow me there. Or if you want to reach out to me, send me a message. It goes directly to my email, and I respond to every email I get.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your story and for giving me the behind-the-scenes blueprint of what your podcast, why you do your podcast, and how you've been growing your podcast. And thank you for chatting with me. I know we didn't get to share a cup of coffee, but no, I feel like it. Yeah.
Part two, we'll both bring our coffee with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Eve.
Thank you so much, Wisdom.
I'll add the links mentioned in the description and the show notes so listeners can just go directly to the site. Thank you.
Fantastic.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I hope you enjoyed listening to this journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And don't forget to join the newsletter at mypodcaststory.com/join for more stories and podcasting insights. Until next time, keep telling your story because someone out there needs to hear it.